Hello and good morning, guys. If you're struggling to write good assessment tool for your cohort and you are unsure or you do not find any single document or a guideline, then this video is for you. Um, there is no single document that I found or came across or a YouTube video which could actually help you to write the assessment tool or the assessment instrument. Um, for a unit of competency. Now, many years ago, when I was trying to do that, I wasn't 100% sure whether what I'm actually producing is really good for my cohort as well. Is the unit of competencies assessment tools that I've actually written are compliant or not? How to write a solid mapping document. What are the things that auditors normally come and look for? So if you're struggling with all that, then I can probably help you with this video. Um, by the way, during the entire video, if you feel that you do not understand anything, please shoot me an email or you're more than welcome to drop me a text message as well. You'll find the details below. However, I'm going to explain to you what a unit of competency is and how are you going to write a good assessment tool. So say, for example, someone comes to you and say, hey, I've got a unit of competency called HLT8015. So this is the advanced resus. So what I will do is I will go ahead and Google it, and I will look for the training.gov.au link, first of all. So it's where you will take what you need to put in an assessment to actually make sure that the assessment is then compliant. Okay, so as you can see, after this Google ad thing, you got training.gov.au. So I will refer to it as TGA, so Training Gov Australia. So it's going to be TGA. So you click onto the TGA website where it says HLT 8015. So now I've clicked it, and what I've seen is this is unit of competency, and the detail says that it is provide advanced resus and oxygen therapy, right? Um, and what you want to look at is this thing over here, where uh, it is the usage recommendation. It says that it's current. So very good. That's what we are after. We want to use this. Then we go down all the way and we want to see the unit of competency has got any prerequisite or not. So in this particular case, we can see that HLT 8011, which is a provide first aid, is basically the prerequisite for this course. What does it actually mean? It means that a student should have actually be deemed competent in HLT 8011, which is a provide first aid, before they come or they can attempt this unit's teaching, learning, and then obviously the assessment for it. So if, say, for example, someone rocks up, you just simply ask them, hey, can you please provide me your certificate, which is the provide first aid. If they do not have the provide first aid certificate, then obviously, they are ineligible. They are unable to then go ahead and produce anything for that. So this is the first thing you're basically going to look at. You're looking at the prerequisite unit. And for prerequisite unit for this one is HLT 8011, provide first aid. So now we have made that very clear, what we need as a prerequisite. A lot of units will have nil. So it means that it is actually, there is none. So it means that they can come in, and if they meet certain standards, they can go ahead and they can attend the training. When we come down here, we actually see the very important components of this unit, which we were talking about, which is HLT 8015. obviously we have got uh, the three main parts in it. So the first part that we have is got the PC. I call it PC. So this is performance criteria. And in the performance criteria, you can see that there are certain elements. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements. So these elements are going to let us know about the tonality of your assessment when you're going to produce or when you're going to write an assessment. The tone is actually set over here. There is a particular sequence that the things are going to be performed in this unit, and that is actually telling us about um, uh, so PC is telling us all about that. So say for example, I won't go into the detail at this stage, but I would just give you, because every unit of competence is going to be obviously different, so we can't do that. But I'll give you a fairly good idea. Say they're saying respond to an emergency situation. So obviously then it will have um, particulars about first element, which is respond to an emergency situation. Then obviously it has got further 6 different subheadings to it. You can say you have to satisfy each and every heading, and you would be doing that in the mapping document. And I'm going to show you the mapping document, how to write a mapping document, because you cannot write a compliant assessment tool without having a good mapping document. Mapping document is not the requirement that you need to have always, but it is highly, highly recommended. And this is the industry best practice to actually have one, which means that when your auditor is going to come and they're going to look through all of those things, they're going to say, yes, they have satisfied this, they have satisfied that, they've satisfied this one, they've satisfied this, and nothing is basically missed. So this is about the first thing that I say that is very, very important when you're going to write your assessment tool, and that's basically the tonality of that. Now, I'm using the word tonality of that. I'm not asking you to write a theory assessment on that, and I'm not asking you to write the practical assessment on that, right? So I would just say that it is a tonality of the entire assessment that you are going to produce today. Then we go to the next step of it, which is very important, that it says performance evidence. It means that students are supposed to perform, and you are, as a trainer and assessor, you are basically going to observe and assess. So performance evidence, I always say that it's basically where you are basically doing practical stuff. So all your practicals, your tasks, whatever you call it, you have to actually go through performance evidence. Now, interesting thing about performance evidence is, see over there when we were talking about the performance criteria, I said that basically it's always in a sequence. It is telling you about how you want to structure your entire assessment and what should be the flow and stuff like that. When you come to performance evidence, if you look through that one, there are a few things that are really important in performance evidence that you always have to do. First, there is a frequency. So say, for example, if you have to um, perform a practical or ask students something, uh, performance evidence can tell you at this stage how many times it is actually required to observe those things, because sometimes one is enough, sometimes three are not enough. So depending on what is the minimum criteria, you can obviously, it will always say at least that one. And obviously if you find that you want to repeat a couple of more times, you can obviously do that. Then when you are doing performance evidence, normally performance evidence will be coming as as different points in that. The newer units, you will see that performance evidence and the knowledge evidence is basically done in alphabetical order. When it was the old ones or the older units, sometimes you see the variation, but then over the period of time, we see TGI is actually improving. They're doing a lot of things in sequence now. So say, for example, you have got manage in line with art guidelines, unconscious breathing, casualty, including appropriate positioning to reduce the risk of the airway compromise. Now, that's something that they are saying as point number one. It's up to you. When do you want to assess that? How do you think you're going to write the practical? And then if that comes as the last point, I'm not bothered. You can just write it on the last, whatever suits you. Okay. And remember, as I said, that once they write everything in the performance evidence and the knowledge evidence, what they do is that then they just hit alphabetical order, and normally you will see a lot of things in alphabetical order coming into it. Anyways, so then we go to the knowledge evidence of it. Now, what I call it, knowledge evidence, is where you want to write your theory questions around it, right? So you can take one dot point and write at least one theory question around it. So knowledge evidence is kind of giving you an indication to write your theory questions. How many theory questions you want to write? I would say there is no set figure, but count your knowledge evidence dot points. So say, for example, there are 25. I would say between, obviously you can cluster some of them, but between, say, for example, 20, if it's 25, then plus minus 5 should be okay. And it honestly depends. If you want to just put all together in 5 questions, but your 5 questions are long enough and they are very comprehensive and they're taking care of everything, then yes, that's fine. So when it comes to the point where you're confused and you don't know how many questions you're going to write, just go through your knowledge evidence dot points and just have a look at how many dot points are there. I would just say per dot point, if you want to go and do 1 to 2 questions, it's up to you. Not all of them would have 2 questions. A lot of them would be satisfied in 1 question against 2 dot points. I don't care, honestly, as far as you are doing that. I usually go for, say, for example, plus minus 4 or 5 questions, and that's it. But obviously, you cannot leave anything at this point. If you leave out a point from your knowledge or your performance, then guys, you'll be in trouble, because then you are basically not addressing it. You are leaving an essential criteria which the unit of competency is asking. Now, as an trainer and assessor, I've actually seen so many people coming to me and they say, hey, we are teaching that because we think that it is really important. Okay, you can teach it, right? But when it comes to the assessment, you have to comply with these assessment rules on TGA, which is given. Sometimes training assessor will come and they would probably say, oh, no, but that's missing from this unit. I'm going to teach that. And when they go to the subsequent unit, which is the Cert 3 level unit or 4 level unit, there could be a chance a Cert 2 level unit is actually missing that thing, but in 3 or 4, you would have it. So don't really go and teach your students Cert 4 when they have paid to actually get Cert 2. You know what I'm saying? So giving them that sort of knowledge is enough at this level, because they are paying you for that unit of competency. If there is extra stuff you want to teach them, or you think that you have got time and you can satisfy whatever is there in the unit of competency. So unit of competency, whatever it is the minimum. So if you start mapping, when I'm going to teach you how to map a document, you will find out that you will struggle, because then you would have got so much stuff or so many questions which are not mapping to anything. And then you will say, hey, I have actually written it and the assessment will be too long, or, so I can't say that it might be compliant, but then you're putting some extra stuff in it. But then if it's a very good auditor who rocks up and who would have actually seen the senior level units as well to the junior level units, they will say then, hey, I've actually seen that in the senior level unit. Are you sure you are basically over testing your students or making it harder for them to actually achieve the outcome which they should be able to achieve anyways? We can talk a lot about that, but I will just move on. On that, you have got assessment conditions. So as you can see, there are assessment conditions, and they are telling you that you need to have this, you need to have at least that many training devices, you need to have, say, for example, a back valve mask, basic airway adjunct. So a lot of those things, which are actually meant to be on that, um, are just um, created for you so that when you need to have that as a minimum before you actually judge your students, right? A lot of RTOs that unfortunately I come across, they don't have the right sort of um, material, training equipment, I would say, and they still go ahead and they say that, oh, that's good. When it comes to audit, then the auditor will say, hey, show me this one, this one, this one, this one. And then you will say, sorry, we don't have it. An example, tourniquet trainer, tourniquets. People are missing those parts sometimes, and they still go ahead and they say, oh, you are compliant. Or because every assessment is basically there, and then it goes into the record. But then when audit comes and say, for example, someone says that, hey, that wasn't taught very well. If the complaints audit is there from ASCO attack, then obviously they go ahead and they ask you everything. And look, we have been in that sort of process. We understand that what they look for. So you have to be very careful when you are designing your assessment tool. Your practical assessment should have all those things as minimum. Whatever they say is the requirement, you have to go through the minimums. Say, for example, they say one of those things you should be using, or one of those props you should be using. So you should have one of those props available. They always give you some options in a lot of categories, in a very high risk course or in a high risk environment. You want to train people to the actual, so that's really important. Obviously, it's a controlled training environment, but then you still go ahead. Okay, so now that is what you understood. Now, the other thing that I want to actually share with you is that some of the unit of competencies will have um, range of conditions. So you have to read through that one. Now, in this particular one, I can't see that there is one, but you will see range of conditions in many of the assessments that I'm writing. Um, and what happens in that is that range of conditions are also telling you about the minimum thing. The other day, I was writing something on, I think, urban fire, wildfire in the RII package, and I could see that there were ranges, and they were very particular about that. You want to do this, you want to do the actual burn, you want to wait for the season, you want to do something when you can actually perform it. And if you are unable to perform it, you can't do it. As a trainer or assessor, you have to make a call. You have to say that, guys, we do not have that. So we can't just go on. So acquire it, okay, and then do it. So, for example, RSA course, very common, hospitality one. I remember when I was writing that one, one of the requirements was to actually have a bar, and then um, I could simulate it, do the other stuff around it. But when it's saying that you have to acquire a bar, and secondhand bar would not be very expensive, is it? Just to have a bar area, you can have like a pub setting, to understand all that, to perform your practicals in the real scenario. That's what we're trying to do. So this is what your TGA is telling you. The last thing before I move on to the other one, or the second half of it, where we actually design an assessment tool, I want to tell you about, if you have a prerequisite, which is over here, um, then you can't cluster that prerequisite with this HLT 8015 course. You can't do that. So you can't just make one assessment and then you can, in parallel, assess the students on provide first aid and provide advanced resus. because it's a prerequisite. It means that a person, and I cannot insist more, you cannot cluster it. You need to make sure that you deliver it separately, you deliver it before the training or the learning for HLT 8015 begins. Now, there could be a lot of things if you have delivered to the same sort of batch, provide first aid, and you know that they're going to do the provide advanced resus. If there are commonalities, you can then remap this particular HLT 8015 to the previous one, which is HLT 8011. So ensure that you always deliver the prerequisite first, or you want to make sure that everyone who is coming to attend this course would have the prerequisite. This is your responsibility to check as a trainer as well. And when you're writing it, write it in your TAS. What is TAS? This will be in another video where I will explain what the TAS is. All right, so now we are going towards our second half of it, where I will take another unit and I will explain to you how to write a mapping document of that and how to write a training assessment tool itself. So there is one particular course that I developed, a full training package. So I will take you through that one, because it doesn't have any prerequisites, so it might be just easier for a lot of people to just kind of know. We will talk about the clustering later on, but I think to this level of what this video is going to be about, I think you don't need that at this stage. Okay, so the unit is RIIVEH305F, operate and maintain a four-wheel drive vehicle. So a very general sort of title. Now, what we want to do is, the first thing what I told you before, always look whether it is current or not. So I go over there on the TGA website, I look for it and I say, hey, that's current, that's fine. I don't care about how many times it was superseded and stuff like that. What were the revisions? If you're interested, you just go ahead. I want to look at under what packages this is. So this is RII, but this is really not what we will be working for the sake of this video. We won't do that. Application. So obviously, application, it tells you whom is it targeted for, if that makes sense. So so sometimes it will say, hey, infrastructure, people will be using it, mining people will be using it, oil and gas will be using it, hospitality would be using it, say for example, and not this particular one, but any competency. So this could be one of those things as well. Again, you have got the performance criteria, the PC, which is going to tell me the tonality of everything. If you look at the PC of this particular unit, it had 6 different elements and then obviously sub elements. So that's divided. So it means that when I'm designing anything or when I'm actually reading through, I just have a little flow in my head by reading it. So this is going to define the tonality of the entire UOC, unit of competency, UOC. TGA is a Training Gov Australia. So that's how you will just remember that. Okay, so we come down and we have a look at, they're asking the foundation skills. So say, for example, the foundation skills are good to look at. They're saying reading, writing, and self-management. So it is telling you, if someone comes to you and they want to do that, but they can't read anything. So this is telling you that you need to have minimum of this requirement to kind of go ahead and qualify. So it might say, for example, if report writing is, a lot of people would say, hey, sorry, a person cannot write the report because they don't have the LLM skills. But then I would then argue, if it is inherent in this particular unit that the report has to be written, and the written report is required, then how would you justify to the auditor that a person was able to write it? Because it's a written record. You can't bypass that. You can't give anyone some sort of flexibility on that. So it's not reasonable adjustment. I can tell you that. Say, for example, someone wants to do a CPR. CPR has to be done leaning down, and a person has got something that they can't lean down and they can't do CPR. Unfortunately, you can't award them that unit of competency. They are not competent in that just because. So there will be few things. Um, I remember it has happened to me long time back in England. I went over there and they said, "Hey, you got to do this test," and I told them, sorry, I can't do it because I am colorblind. They said, you can attend it, but you can't sit in the exam because that's a prerequisite. So if someone can give me a reasonable adjustment, no. So reasonable adjustment is only when it is reasonable. And if it's the requirement of the unit, ask them to go ahead and do something else instead of it because they won't be able to perform it in their task. They can attend it, but if they're unable to do it, um, you have to ask them to go back. If the circumstances change, they come back and do that. But then unit of competency, this is not me or you writing. This is on the national level, what they have actually made sure that we need to have that as a minimum. All right, so we have got the performance evidence again. So what did I tell you about the performance evidence? Performance evidence is where you are going to design your practicals around. So performance evidence is always, so PE, performance evidence, PC is basically your performance criteria, which is tonality, and then KE is basically your knowledge evidence, which I always say that write your assessment questions, theory questions around it. You won't fail. You will just write the theory questions around it. Assessment conditions, we talked about that before. So assessment conditions or the range of conditions. Okay, you would have either or. You could have both because the older units um, either are having assessment conditions or range of conditions, and they're just changing now. So, anyways, you have to go through both if you have. And I was writing the unit of competency today where we had assessment conditions and range of conditions. They were both very important, so I had to read them through. I had to add them to my mapping and my TAS at the same time. Now, the other thing is that they will tell you what sort of unit are you teaching? What is the level of the unit you are going to teach? So say, for example, if it's the if cert 2 level, or is it cert 3 level, or is it cert 4 diploma level, whatever. So with that, the requirements of how you're going to write or ask the questions, it is going to change as well. Because on a senior level, you would probably be required to ask them sort of describe or explain briefly. However, on a junior level, or say, for example, AQF level 2, you're probably just going to ask them to just dot point things. And when you go to a diploma level, say, for example, you're going to ask them to write the entire report or an essay, the stuff like that. So always make sure what is your cohort. Do not, and I cannot insist enough, do not write a fill in the blanks or multiple choice for everything. Do not do that. That's a blunder, I would say, because depending on what level it is, you don't want to do that. You want to ask. You want to check whether they are ticking the basics of the unit of competency or not. And if they're not, you need to retrain it. Sometimes your assessment tools are so badly written as well that everyone passes. I would just say don't do that. Righto. So we talked about this. We had a look quickly whether there was any prerequisite. So I can't see any prerequisite for this particular unit. And I can see my assessment conditions, my PC, PE, and KE right over there. So now start writing the assessment tool without wasting any time. All right, so I've got some of the things ready in front of me. I will open Um, I will go ahead and show you how to do. Um, I will open the trainer's guide. And what is the trainer's guide? Where you write the questions, and then obviously you're writing the answers to that. So you're writing the questions and you're writing the answers or the sample answers. Um, so this is um, my trainer's guide. As you, sorry guys, as you can see, this is a trainer's guide. I just put all the instructions into it. I put my lesson plan into it, and then I just go ahead, put the unit code, the name. But you know, it's just one of the templates, so you can always go ahead and create another one. There are many you can find, and then obviously how I write it, I give a time, and then I say, okay, you know what, this is my theory assessment. So I'm writing the questions and answers. In a minute, I will explain to you where these questions and answers are coming from. And then I go down and I see that I've got some practicals. So in the practicals, I have developed two practicals for this particular unit. Um, and obviously my observations and everything is there. Don't worry about this at this stage. I just showed you this is the trainer's guide. So this is basically the sample answers. They're going to, what are they going to look like once you have it? Okay, I want to share with you uh, the assessment. So this is the student assessment. And obviously, as you can imagine, the student assessment is all blank because it is something that I will give out to the students and students will fill it out for me. So this is all blank at this stage. So this is just the tick the correct answers and stuff like that. So as you can see in this one, what I wanted to show you, I have got amalgam of different techniques to ask people. Say, if I ask a question where people are listing, then I ask sometimes a question about true and false. I ask something to tick. I can possibly ask people to go ahead and match few things. But I can also go ahead and ask people to do some of the things like explain the reasons. I can just ask them about some of the procedures. So for example, over here, I'm just writing basic maintenance procedure for the four-wheel drive. What are they? I'm asking them about certain strategic things that they have to do and they have to think about if something is malfunctioned or when they're in the industry setting, what are they doing or what they could actually face or find. Then obviously I've got the things written around drive and recover a four-wheel drive off rocky terrain. And then I could have the other one as well, similarly as well, practical too. So when I decided to write two practicals in it, there must be a reason behind it when I decided to. Sometimes they're asking you to do that. I will give you, so remember the unit? The unit was RIIVEH 305F. That's the unit. When I come down over here into the performance evidence, I told you before as well, they say operate and maintain a four-wheel drive vehicle on at least, sorry, my mouse is not working very well, on at least two occasions, including performing pre-departure checks. This is this, tuck, 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 tuck. So they were asking me to do that on two occasions. For me, what is more clear, I will design two different practicals. I will put people to do practical number one. I will observe everything and do practical number two, and I will observe everything again. So I have created different scenarios around it because it could be, you know, that the scenarios could be totally different when it comes to it. So I've just given them two scenarios where they're going to do it. Now, because we're talking about the assessment tool, let's talk about the mapping document. Um, and when I talk about the mapping document, I am going to share with you soon some of the mapping documents that you want to make like, um, hang on, I would have the mapping documents somewhere. Um, um,